Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. What's up, traders? What's going on? Welcome back and happy, my favorite day of the week, hump day, because I get to scream hump day. Freaking love it. Good morning again, everybody. Hit us with a big old good morning inside of chat, and then let's go ahead and take a vote. How many times is Josh going to say good morning in the first 60 seconds of going live? So far, it's 4. All right, so hit me with a good morning. 5 inside of chat. And if you're feeling up to it, go ahead and open the mic in the Zoom and hit us with a big good morning as well. That's 6. All right, so if you said 10, it'll probably happen. All right. Andy, what's up?
Good morning. Good morning.
I love it. Good morning, everybody. Do we count those good mornings as well? If that's the case, we've officially hit 10 good mornings in the past 60 seconds. Spencer, what's up? Jonathan, Andy, Patrick, Stir, and Steve, and Christy, and Tom, and Kenyana, and Jonathan, and every freaking buddy else inside of chat. Good morning again. And happy hump day, ladies and gentlemen. Let's dive into it. We got about, 27 minutes until the market open. We got a few things to discuss today. As always, the SPY and the Qs looking pretty good. We'll break those down, get you guys the game plans for today. Also be discussing AMD after earnings. We got some Tesla action today maybe, and then possibly Disney as well. And then we'll take a moment and review a couple of these swing trade opportunities as well. SLB, maybe coin as well for today. We'll keep those on watch, and we'll definitely discuss those. All right, but let's go ahead and dive right into it. Let's start jamming with the pre-market rundown show, guys. Right, so the economic calendar for today. Let's take a look at it, and let's become mindful of what we have going on for today. So right after market open at 9:45, we do have Chicago PMI data. That's of medium importance. Definitely the type of data that we've seen the market react to before. So keep that in mind. We do have 9:45 data here today. Then we have some more kind of medium important data, not really the type of data that the market really reacts to. But it's definitely something to be mindful of. Okay, 10 o'clock, you got pending home sales data month over month and year over year. But the most important piece of data and the most important event of the day is coming at 2 o'clock Eastern, baby. 2 o'clock today, we got the Fed's interest rate decision. And then here at 2:30, we do have the Fed press conference with Mr. Jay Powell. So here at 2 o'clock, I don't really expect the market to do too much to see that big of a reaction because the market's priced in a 99% chance that the Fed is going to hold rates steady. They are not going to cut rates until September. And so honestly, that's what the market is expecting. That's most likely what we're going to see. And again, the market's already priced that in. So again, we may get a little bit of a reaction, but I don't expect it to be massive. Any kind of bigger movement will most likely come right at and after 2:30 during the Fed press conference. So that 15-20 minutes, right? So from like 2:30 up until like 2:50 to 3 o'clock, Jay Powell will be speaking. Any kind of remarks he gives, any statement, anything like that, the algos will react to certain things that he says during the press conference. So the market will be heightened volatility during that time. There will be some movement. There may be inconsistency within the price action and with overall movement, and that's normal. So again, if you're like, man, like I'm already just trying to get into the market and take good trades and not be in the market when it's, all over the place and random and heightened volatility, you may just want to sit out from 2:30 to 3 o'clock, let the market kind of settle back down, gain a sense of direction, and really just go from there and don't participate between 2:30 and 3 o'clock for those reasons. Okay, but 2:30, you got the Fed press conference, and that's the time of day where the market can get a little irrational. All right, start to really move a little bit and maybe provide us with some opportunity. We will see. All right, but other than that, guys, that's what we got on the economic calendar for today. Now, earnings for tonight, the most anticipated earnings for tonight's going to be Meta and ARM and Qualcomm. So you got Meta, ARM, and then QCOM, right? Qualcomm reporting after the close today. And then tomorrow we got Amazon, Apple, Intel, Coinbase, DraftKings, Roku, Square. I mean, we got a lot of amazing earnings for tomorrow as well. So I'm super excited to see what we have tomorrow and Friday in the market, being that we got some large cap earnings. All right, but tonight, again, it's Meta, number one, ARM, and Qualcomm tonight after the close. But let's go ahead and dissect the SPY, the Qs. Let's pick it apart. Let's talk about what we got going on for today and get you guys some game plans established so you guys can rock and roll and in the month, strong and profitable, guys. All right, so here with the SPY, this is pretty much the same areas we were discussing yesterday. So our zones haven't changed too much, just a few small tweaks, okay? But we have a key make or break on the SPY today, right? Your line in the sand. This is a very significant make or break level today for the SPY. It's going to be the zone here between 547.08 to 547.51. That's a key area, guys, okay? You have this daily gap overhead, right? So if you go to the daily chart, you see that we have a big old daily gap here on the SPY. The lower end of this gap is at 549.16. The top end of this gap is at 553.33. Right, that line in the sand, it's all of this resistance that we've had over the past 4 days. Thursday's high day, we got rejected. Friday high day, we got rejected. Monday high day, at that zone, we get rejected. Yesterday high day, at that zone, we have a strong rejection. That is such a key level of resistance over the past 4 trading sessions between 547.08 to 547.51. We came into it in pre-market. And we were hitting it. We could not break through it. But finally, buyer stepped in, gained control, and now we're above that level, right? That was such a key level of resistance. Now we're above it. It can definitely turn into a very key level of support for today, okay? And then we do have the top gap right above. So we're currently hitting the bottom end of the gap right now at 549.16. That could be a little level of resistance, okay? But if we are able to get above the bottom end of this gap at 549.16 and stay inside the gap and stay above that 549.16, it's very realistic that we see the SPY attempt to close the gap today up around 553.33. Okay, so here are going to be our 2 to 3 game plans for today. Okay, game plan number 1 is if the SPY is able to just break inside of this gap at market open and stay inside of this gap and stay above 549.16. If that's what we see take place, where the SPY is either opening inside the gap or we're opening below it, but we break into it, it doesn't really matter. If the SPY is inside the gap, and as long as we hold the lower end of this gap as intraday support, we're looking to play the SPY long today up to the top end of this gap at 553.33. That's going to be game plan number 1, okay? Game plan number 2 is if we see a short setting up off the bottom end of the gap, right? Just because we have opportunity to get inside the gap doesn't mean we're going to, right? And we know that the bottom end of the gap and the top end of the gap are key areas of support resistance depending on which side of that level you're on. So if we break through the bottom end gap resistance, we know it turns into very, very strong support and we play the gap fill long, right? But every now and then we try to break inside the gap, but we can't hold the lower end of support. We get back below it and we more or less see it turn back into resistance, right? So if we do see a short opportunity setting up at that 549.16 and we just can't break above and hold above it, I would be looking to get short today here on the SPY. Where to? That key line in the sand. It's a very key level. That's 547.08 to 547.51. Now, for any reason we fall back below that key line in the sand, right, and we stay below it, hey, there's another short opportunity. If you're in here, you can definitely hold a runner for the next leg down. If you're not in here, but we see that crack below the line in the sand and we back test it as resistance, that would be a great fresh entry to catch the SPY short for the next leg down. And how much lower could we see the SPY go today if we do fall below that line in the sand? Like how much lower could we see the SPY go? I see potential down to 542.46 to 543.02 for today here on the SPY. Okay. And then your final game plan is if we come down into that line in the sand and hold it to support. So let's say we do start to drop on off and we pull back into that key level, that line in the sand, and we do hold it as very strong intraday support. Will that be an area where I would look to get long? Where to? The bottom end of the gap at 549.16. And then if we do break inside the gap and hold the lower end, not only can you take that as a fresh trade on up to fill the gap, but if you're already in down here off support, right, you can definitely be positioned to hold a runner on up to the top end of that daily gap, which again is at 553.33. So there's a couple game plans today. It really depends on what we do, right? But there's definitely quite a bit of opportunity, whether that's getting long for a gap fill, whether that's getting short off the bottom end of the gap because it gets rejected, whether that's getting long off that key level of support for the next leg up, or whether that's getting short for the crack and retest below that key level for the next leg down, right? There's definitely going to be some great opportunity today, depending on how the SPY wants to set up. And I don't really care how the SPY sets up. I don't care if it sets up for the long. I don't care if it sets up for the short. And I don't really care which level it happens at, right? There's like 5 different potentials, 5 different things realistically that could set up and play on out today. I just need one of the 5 things to validate itself. So I feel confident to take that trade and we can capitalize and make some money today, guys, right? So I really like the SPY. I like the location. I like where we're at. We're sitting around some pretty key significant levels. And I think today is going to be a pretty nice day to capitalize on some great opportunity and lock in some great profits, guys, right? So that's my analysis and that's my game plans. Those are my game plans for today here on the SPY, guys, okay? Let's go ahead and dissect the Qs here with QQQ. We do have a line in the sand as well, a key make or break level for today here on the Qs. And that zone is going to be here between 467.95 to 468.18. That is a key level. Okay, and so let's build some plans based around that key level. If the Qs are able to break through that key level and we can come back and back test it and validate it and hold above it as some pretty strong intraday support, I would absolutely be interested in getting long. Where to? I would want to get long into the bottom end of this daily gap, right? We have this daily gap here on QQQ. The bottom end of this daily gap is right here at 474.22. not only is at the bottom end of the gap, it's also some previous support, right? Previous resistance, top end of the gap. Not only that, it's up against your 20 EMA and your 50 SMA as well. So I would really be targeting, right, the bottom end of that gap up against all of that previous support and those two moving averages as well. That'll put you up around 474.22. So if we break through that line in the sand level, we hold it as key intraday support, I would be interested in playing the Qs long up into that 474.22 level, okay? But let's say the Qs are not able to break and hold that level. Let's say we see a short setting up off that key zone of resistance. Well, if that's the case, I would happily look to get short and play some puts for the next leg down. How much lower do I think the Qs could come down to? Next daily zone of support would be down between 465.70 to 465.95. That would be your first target. Then if we fall below that region, right, we could see another leg down, and that would put us down between 461.62 to 462.08. Okay, so there's two plans for today here on the Qs, right? And it really just comes down to what are the Qs able to do off this line in the sand between 467.95 to 468.18. It's very simple. If you break through it and hold above it as support, play it long. If you come up to it and you just can't break through it, or you see a short setting up off that zone, simply look to play it short for the next leg down here on the Qs. It really just comes down to what are the Qs going to do, if anything, at that key line in the sand area, okay? So those are your two game plans today on the Qs. We break and hold that zone. You could look to play that long to 474.22. We set up short off that zone. You could look to play the short back down to 466 today here on QQQ. All right. Other than that, let's take a look at AMD. So AMD today, definitely looking for a possible short here on AMD today. All right. So the first thing that I see is we have this zone of previous support that could absolutely turn into some key resistance here for today. So I have this daily zone of support between 153.35 to 154.76. Okay. It was this previous gap level. So again, this was a zone of demand, right? The bottom end of this gap was a previous zone of demand. We've already came into it. Right? But again, I'm just looking at then referencing that prior gap level that we saw turn support, we bounced, turn support, we bounced, and we tried to hold the support here. And we tried to bounce before we lost it and dropped on off pretty hard and heavy. So we have this zone of previous support that can turn into new resistance, number one. Number two, if you take a fib extension from the swing high down to the swing low, you also see that the 61.8 extension lines up beautifully with that daily zone of resistance. And if you look at those moving averages, you actually see as well, it's right up against the 20 EMA and the 200 SMA as resistance. So you got a key daily zone of resistance. That's number one, right? It's up against that 61.8 retracement level. That's an area of resistance. It's number two. And it's up against those two moving averages as resistance. We're coming up into them from the underneath side. It's very, very likely we see them respected as areas of resistance today. You have the 20 EMA and the 200 SMA. That's three reasons to look to get short up against that zone of resistance today here on AMD. And that's up between 153.35 to 154.76. Okay, so that's my game plan on AMD. If we come up into that daily zone of resistance, I know it's up against that 61.8 extension resistance, and it's up against those two moving averages resistance. Then I just need price action and really how price develops at that region just to validate there's a reason to get short. And if we come up into that zone and we just cannot break through it, and we clearly see there's more sellers than buyers, I would absolutely be willing to get short on AMD today, expecting a slight pullback back down towards around 145 here on AMD, guys. Okay, so again, keep this zone on watch. It's a very key area of resistance for today here on AMD. It's between 153.35 to 154.76. And again, keep it simple. You're just waiting for AMD to get to that zone. If it gets to that zone, you're waiting to see if it's setting up and validating a short, just based on how price is developing, how it's setting up, how price is reacting. If everything's setting up beautifully and it looks good to the short side, we will be looking to get short off that zone of resistance. We'll put stops right above it, and our target will be down here at 145. You can already see this is a very, very low risk, high reward setup on AMD the day after earnings. And like Stir said, keep in mind as well that the IV will start to drop on off at the open today. The spreads may be a little large on the options. So give it about 3 to 5 minutes to let those options tighten up and kind of settle as we're seeing a pretty big gap up after earnings. We're gapping up about 12 points. So again, just kind of wait for those options to settle. Then let's look for an opportunity here on AMD, guys. Okay? And then other than that, I was thinking maybe Tesla today, if we can get back through this zone. We have a zone of resistance between 225.39 to 226.22, and I'm just curious to see if Tesla can snap back above that zone and regain it as intraday support. So if Tesla's able to push back above that daily zone of resistance and we see it turning into intraday support, I would be interested in playing Tesla long back up to this key zone of resistance between 233.04 to 234.32 on Tesla. It's definitely a back burner. It doesn't look phenomenal like the SPY. It doesn't look great like AMD, but there's potential with Tesla today, guys. All right, so key zone is between 225.39 to 226.22. And all we're looking for Tesla to do is just break back above that zone intraday, pull back, and hold it as intraday support. And if that's what we see taking place, we're looking to play calls back up to at least 233, potentially 234 here today on Tesla. But we got to get through that zone first. If we do not break that zone, there is no trade. All right, that's Tesla. Disney for a gap fill rejection, guys, right? So Disney, you guys were playing this long yesterday for the gap fill long from 91.69 to 94.13. You filled the gap yesterday, which is wonderful. A lot of you guys took that trade. You made some profit. Congrats. Now we're looking for a possible gap fill rejection. Okay, so if Disney cannot break the top end of this gap today, which is at 94.13, we could absolutely look to play Disney short back down to the bottom end of this gap at 91.69. So as long as we see Disney holding below 94.13, we can look to play Disney short all the way back down to the bottom end of this gap. Okay, and that's at 91.69. That would be your main profit target, your MPT, your main profit target. Now, are there going to be other areas where you should scale out and lock in profit? Of course, right? Up against all that resistance from yesterday at 93.18 would be PT number 1. Then coming on down into these lows from yesterday, which were also the highs from Monday. That puts you at 92.50, another profit target. That would be PT number 2. And then your main PT would be the bottom end of the gap at 91.69 there on Disney. Okay, so let's keep Disney on watch for a possible gap fill rejection today. We filled the gap yesterday. Now we're looking for the gap fill rejection, and we're expecting to see maybe a little bit of downside today here on Disney. And then Meta. Again, Meta's got earnings tonight, and Meta may fill the gap into earnings. It's very, very possible, and you do have this demand supply zone overhead, like right there. So if we can come up and fill this gap today and we can start to see it closing into that daily supply zone, there could be a short trade on Meta through earnings. Okay, so let's keep that in the back of our mind. Let's analyze that towards the end of the day, and let's see what Meta's doing towards the end of the day. But there's still an opportunity to day trade Meta ahead of earnings. Okay, so that's simply going to be trading the gap. All right, so if Meta can break the bottom end of this gap at 476.29, and if we can hold that 476.29 as intraday support, I do believe we could see some movement ahead of earnings to the upside. And I do believe we can see Meta realistically getting up towards around 487.73 to fill this daily gap. And that would also put us right into that supply zone. And if we see price getting into that zone today ahead of earnings, there could be an opportunity to play some puts through earnings tonight here on Meta. All right, so let's go ahead and get that marked up. we're all set. We know that we can trade this long for a gap fill long. Right, if we break and hold that 476.29, we could play this long up to 487.73. And if at the end of the day we see Meta is in that zone, we could be looking for a low risk swing trade through earnings, right, as we're coming into that zone of supply. All right, so with that being said, maybe some Meta action, at least for the day trade, right? At least for that possible gap fill long on Meta today. I think it looks good. Want to keep it on watch, guys. All right, so that's the analysis on Meta and my game plan. We'll see if anything happens, right? You guys are all set with Disney, Tesla, and AMD. We got 4 great stocks for today. And the SPY looks phenomenal as well, guys. I mean, the SPY looks great. There's so many different things that we could see take place, right? There's like 5 or 6 different hypothetical plans we put together based on what could happen. We just need one of those 5 things to present itself so we can capitalize on it, one and none trade, and make some money. So I really like the SPY. I want to keep a lot of my focus on the SPY today. The Qs look great as well, up against that line in the sand, right? There's definitely some great opportunity today with the Qs. And then again, AMD, Tesla, Disney, Meta looking pretty good as well. We have a very awesome day today. We got a lot of opportunity. We have a lot of potential, and I'm excited. It's the last day of the month. We can end the month strong and profitable, and today looks like it's going to be that day, guys. So I'm all set, ready to rock and roll, or are you guys all set, ready to rock and roll? Let me know inside a chat. If you have any questions, go ahead and type those up. If there's any stocks that you want to have reviewed, let's go ahead and take a look at those as well.
So I jumped on the SLB swing trade yesterday.
You jumped on the SLB. Yep. I like it today if we come back down into that zone before we start to pop. Hopefully it's not like Team where it gaps up and goes and never comes back to that zone day 2. But yeah, if it comes back down and we do hold it as support today, I'm looking for the swing trade entry myself today.
Yeah, I did. I laddered as we talked about yesterday. So I did the Septembers and the Novembers.
And you did the 50s?
Yes.
Nice, man. Yeah, I mean, solid entry. I mean, towards the end of the day, we're closing back inside that zone, leaving a nice little candle formation right up against that zone of support, and we got pretty damn close to that trend line as well and saw a bit of a bounce. So I like it. We dipped below the zone into the trend line. We held it. We bounced. Decent close back into that zone, and today's little gap up is ideal. Ideally, that's what you wanted to see today, is that gap up. That shows some strength. That's starting to look really good for the swing trade, man. So I like the entry, and I like it myself. If we can open and pull back as close to that 47.60 as possible today, and as long as we hold above it as support, I definitely want to start entering the swing trade myself. But looking good, brother. Looking really good. And first target's going to be that 200 SMA.
What do you show the 200 SMA as? Because I know we've had a little differentiation in terms of what it is.
$50.40.
Right on target. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The water guy literally just showed up. He's fine. He can drop the water off. I don't need to talk to him. It's just the water guy. Don't worry about it. He's just ringing the doorbell, letting us know that he's dropping the water. He can pick up the bottles next time unless you want to give them to him. Up to you. All right, any other questions, guys? Let me know. If not, we're all set, ready to rock and roll, and we got about a minute 30 until the market opens on up. Do not forget 9:45 data, 10 o'clock data. Light data, but just be mindful of that. And then 2:30, we do have the Fed's rate decision at 2, and then the press conference at 2:30, ladies and gentlemen. So be mindful of that, all right? But let's crush it, guys. It's the last day of the month. We're going to end the month strong. We're going to end the month profitable. We're going to have some fun while we do it. So let's get after it, guys. So my main focus for market open is going to be the SPY off the bottom end of that daily gap at 549.16. All right, I want to see if we have an opportunity, and if we see something setting up right at market open off that level. So all of my focus really on the SPY because we're going to be opening right at that key level. I even want to watch the Qs, guys, because the Qs are going to be opening right at that key level as well. And there could be some out of the gate opportunity for some great trades to start the day. So definitely going to be back and forth between the SPY and the Qs because we're sitting at some pretty key levels on both of those. AMD, we got some time once the market opens to see it get up into that zone of resistance. So about 5 minutes in, we'll go look at AMD and see if it's setting up for us. Tesla, look at that, guys. Tesla popping above that key zone right ahead of market open. So if Tesla can now pull back into that 225.39 to 226.22 region right at the start of the day and hold it to support, we have a killer long opportunity up to 233 on Tesla today, guys. All right. I mean, there's a lot of great opportunity. The goal is to identify which one looks the best to you and put all of your focus on that one stock. And if it sets up, be prepared to take it and lock in some great profits. So right now, we're going to shift all of our focus over to the SPY to go ahead and start the day. And we'll definitely be looking at the Qs off that key level as well here, guys. Let's go grab some hedgies and see where hedgy pressure puts us. Again, I like where the SPY and the Qs are at right at market open, and we could start to see a nice little pullback off all of this overhead resistance if we fail to break through it. So all eyes on the SPY and the Qs, guys. You should be all set, ready to rock here. Just like that, starting to see a nice little drop on off across the board, SPY and the Qs off all of that resistance. SPY's weekly hedge pressure for today, ladies and gentlemen, is right here at 548.50. 548.50 is your weekly hedge pressure for today. So if you are short at the bottom end of the gap, right out of the gate, just saying if you are, I don't know, this is a first PT into hedge pressure. If you fall below hedge, you can definitely get down towards around 547.50 here. So weekly hedge today on the SPY, 548.50. If you are in the short for any reason, you should be taking some profit. Monthly's way down there. Monthly's at 537.50. 537.50 is your monthly hedge on the SPY. Let's go grab QQQ. I'll grab IWM as well for you guys. So here with the Qs, you got a 470 monthly. 470 monthly hedge pressure today on the Qs, and you're running a 467 weekly. You're coming down to 467 weekly hedge right now. You're on the Qs. And then IWM. Nice little gap up today, about 0.7%. I'm sure that position's doing pretty nice, Tom. Let's go grab some IWM hedges for you, though. You got a 223.50 monthly. I like that. Came down into it right at the start of the day and bouncing off of it. Pretty sweet. No, it's not. That was a pre-market candle, but you still held above it. 223.50 is going to be your monthly hedge on IWM. I think 226 could realistically get hit today. And that was your first target. Weekly hedge is going to be 221.50 on IWM. Yeah, that looks strong. We're gapping above monthly hedge. We held it. We're ripping. Yeah, I think 226, 227 today on IWM is super realistic. And that was your first PT. And if we can break that zone and get above it, oh, she's looking good for the next leg up into the 233, 234 region. On IWM. It's really good.
The other thing to look out for today, especially on Qs and SPY, that you're going to have juicier premiums because of the Fed today.
Absolutely. And then rolling through some pretty hot earnings last night, too. That'll juice the premiums up a little bit.
Absolutely.